Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. My name's Jack. Today we've got a LEGO Star Wars collection for you. This is every single Rebel Hoth Trooper minifigure ever made.
So in this collection we've got 18 minifigures in total, and as you might expect, they're made up mostly of the Rebel troopers, but of course there's a few officers and some other high-ranking officials. So we're gonna go through this collection chronologically, check out how the evolution of the Hoth Trooper looks in LEGO, and we're starting off way back in 1999. This minifigure was among the very first Star Wars figures ever released. The set he came out in was Snowspeeder 7130, and he retails for $10, but this guy actually has a lot of good things going for him. He's got a relatively confident smile, despite the fact that blood is running down his face. And I think that's an interesting sort of print. It almost looks like sort of red hair or red bangs when you take the helmet off. And you'll notice that they didn't bother to print one of his eyebrows, because I guess they figured the blood was covering it up anyways. They molded the old backpack piece in white for the Hoth Trooper, which fits pretty well. And you can see that even back in 1999, they still bothered to put a little bit of reflective printing onto the torso piece. We don't have any real blaster rifles yet, so he's got his camera, and they don't have a mold for goggles either, so instead they just gave him a brown visor. It looks very strange, and I think that's the old mold for the pilot cap instead of the Hoth helmet. And yeah, so this is the very first iteration of a Hoth Trooper, and if you're familiar with these figs, then you'll see that the design has changed quite a lot since then. But let's check out the progression. The next new guy came out in 2003 and appeared in the set Rebel Snowspeeder 4500. The only truly notable difference between this guy is he now has goggle pieces, his headgear is changed. He still has the same bloody, smiling head print, and that old big camera piece used as his blaster rifle. I guess if you compare the original, maybe the plastic has changed as well, or perhaps our original guy just is kind of aged poorly. I'm not really sure. Anyways, this guy sells for $6 on BrickLink, and 3 years later we get our next Hoth Trooper. He appeared in the set Hoth Rebel Base 7666, and the notable differences are the groin and leg piece have been inverted for the colors. The legs are now white, and the groin piece is now that sort of light bluish gray. He's got a standard flesh-colored face instead of the yellow. His smile is pretty much your standard LEGO smile, and this is the first Hoth Trooper to be given a sort of regular blaster rifle. He's $3, and let's check out this next guy who's almost exactly the same. He came out in the Echo Base 7749. This was a release in 2009, by the way, and the only difference between this guy and the very last one from 2007 is that we finally have a new goggles piece. So we went from brown visor to goggles to these sort of snowboarder type goggles. They're a bit more accurate, and this mold for the eyewear hasn't changed since. He sells for $2 on BrickLink, he's relatively common, and 2010 gives us our first totally different update for the figure. Well, at least a couple of them are totally different. The officer still looks pretty similar. Anyways, this trooper here came out in a battle pack set 8083. He now has pupils in his eyes and a concerned sort of expression. The torso piece is totally different and updated. It looks a lot more accurate. The detailing just looks a bit cleaner. The blaster rifle is a bit bigger, which I think is also more accurate, but the greatest improvement is the shape for the cap. It sticks up a bit on the top, and that's so you can have those goggles fit above the visor, or you can pop them off and fit them in front of the face of the minifig. It's a great little function, it looks accurate, and I definitely welcome all these new improvements for the new Hoth Trooper. This other guy I've just labeled as Tan Hoth Trooper Smirk Face, and that's because he's exactly the same as the last guy, except now his face has a slight sort of confident or maybe even mean looking smirk. He came out in the sets AT-AT Walker 8129 as well as Battle of Hoth 75014, and he retails for $3. Now this last guy of 2010 is a little bit strange because this is our first Hoth officer, but in reality we just have the old Hoth Trooper body plus the new tan mold for the cap, and of course a confused mustache face, and now he is an officer instead of just a regular Hoth Trooper. I do like the print for the mustache face, and the tan cap with the white goggles is a really nice fit, but I think it is a little bit strange that once they change the look of the normal trooper, that the old trooper body now just becomes the body of the officer. He came out in the same battle pack as I mentioned before, 8083. He retails for $3. And 2012 gives us our next Hoth officer, actually, and maybe you can guess what the similarities are. He's pretty much exactly the same as the other two updated 2010 tan troopers, and he's got the same mustache face as the previous officer. So I guess all it takes to be an officer is maybe a mustache, I'm not really sure. He retails for $3 like the last guy, and 2013 brings us two new figs, this one being pretty much exactly the same as the other guys that we've been looking at, except for the face has changed. This is sort of a stubbly beard, kind of sneering looking face. And in case you want to know, he's not an officer, but he is just a regular trooper. He came with a long blaster rifle and appeared in the set Battle of Hoth 75014. I don't believe this face is a particularly common print, and he sells for $7, whereas the second figure that also came out in this same set, this is General Rakin. That is an exclusive print for the body here, and he's got two different headpieces actually, one that shows his gray hair and another one which is just the cap. Rakin has just this one single expression. You can see some of the lines in his face, and he definitely looks very, very stern. But because this general was released again in the advent calendar the next year, his parts aren't very exclusive, or at least they're not hard to get your hands on, so he sells for about $6. And let's jump up to 2015. This guy is sort of what I'm calling the third generation of Hoth troopers, and the color scheme has dropped back to white mostly, though he still has gray legs and a bit of white printing that kind of goes halfway down. This makes him the first trooper to have any printing on the legs, and the first trooper to have any printing on the back. The backpack piece is still the same from the very first guy, but if you take it off, you can see the detailing has gone all the way around. It looks pretty good, and now the cap is also turned white along with the goggles. Personally, I don't think it looks quite as good. The goggles just don't stand out as much, but I absolutely prefer this new printing on the torso piece. There's a lot of reflective detailing going on, and this trooper's starting to look really, really complete. He's got a pretty plain looking face with some lines on the cheeks, and he came out in the Star Wars Advent Calendar set first, 75097, and he sells for $4. Now, 2016 was the biggest year by far for getting new figures for Hoth. 7 figures in total were released this year that were in some sort of new combination of parts or prints, and 6 of those figures actually came out in just one set. This set is, of course, Assault on Hoth 75098. Let's just jump through all the different new guys that came out. First, let's check out just the regular troopers. The body detailing is exactly the same, I believe, as the trooper that came out in the Advent Calendar from the year before, but the faces have changed. This guy here has just got a furrowed brow, nothing much more than that. Definitely a very serious looking figure. And here's a really great print. This minifigure's got a blonde beard and mustache printed onto the face, and I think this is supposed to reflect a specific soldier that you actually see in one of the scenes from the battle. The stern-faced trooper sells for $4 on BrickLink, whereas this new print for the blonde beard face sells for around $8. I don't know if it's a brand new print, but it certainly isn't very common. Now, I like the look of these next two figures because the printing is actually supposed to reflect sort of what the interior base soldiers are looking like, and not what the soldiers in the trenches look like. So they're not wearing heavy overcoats, but instead just have their snow pants and sort of warm-looking vests. And I'm pretty sure the printing on the body for both the legs and the torso are completely exclusive. Actually, I know that they are. This guy has the same furrowed brow like the previous soldier we were looking at, while our next trooper has a bit of sort of a red beard and some lines under his eyes. He certainly looks a bit stressed. Both of these guys, because they're not on the front lines, are just armed with blaster pistols, and because the body and leg prints are specifically exclusive to the set, both of these soldiers sell for around $13. Our next minifigure up is not a soldier, but instead this is the ion cannon operator, or at least that's what she was doing in the movie. This is Torrin Farr. The minifigure has the exact same printing for the legs and body as the previous two guys, so those are exclusive prints, and she comes with a relatively common double expression female face. One's pretty happy, and the other one's looking a bit confused. She's got a brown ponytail, and she doesn't have any parts that I think are a little bit more rare than the other figs, but right now I can see her going pretty commonly for around $17 on BrickLink. The last minifig from this set was the Hoth Officer, and if his body's looking a little bit familiar, that's because this is pretty much the exact same print design as what we got from the General, but it's printed onto a slightly lighter tan plastic, and I believe some of the brown tones have been changed ever so slightly to technically sort of make this an exclusive print. I like the print for his face though. The mustache is definitely a bit different than what I'm normally used to seeing. He comes with a blaster pistol, and because he, like so many of these other guys, are pretty much exclusive just to this one gigantic set, he sells for around $14 on BrickLink. Now technically there is one more figure that came out this year. He was not part of the Assault on Hoth set, but instead came out in an activity book, and he pretty much is exactly like any of the outdoor troopers that we saw before with the white bodies and the printing on the legs, except he shares this exact same print from the officer we were just looking at. He sells for around $3, and we just finished off the entire Rebel Hoth collection. Now before anybody says anything, yes, of course, Han, Luke, and Leia had their Hoth iterations in minifigure form. I covered all of them in their individual review videos, and there's a few other characters, maybe like the medical droid that I didn't go over, but don't worry, they all have their place in their own videos for the future. But let's just take a closer look at the general evolution of the Hoth Trooper fig. He started out relatively complete, but quite a few of his parts ended up getting changed throughout the years, like his helmet, his goggles, the weapon he used, and then LEGO of course played around with the coloration of the body, with the tan moving back to white. But what I like about this is that so many of these figures, even though they came from several different years, could all still be kind of put into the same diorama, and I feel like they would fit very well together. I can't really think of any other figs that I want from Hoth actually, so I'll just take this opportunity to say, LEGO, please make another large Cloud City set.
Okay, that is it for this episode. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. And if you have any ideas about any other LEGO collections you want to see in the future, let us know in the comments section below. Okay, that is it for this episode. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.